Welcome to the Colorful Clipboard, where we discuss the building blocks of making dough in childcare. I'm Kate.
And I'm Carrie.
Welcome back to Colorful Clipboard, and today we are going to go try to find all those loose parts, loose marbles. I don't know. We're going to go find things that we have wandering around our classroom, and Carrie, just start.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about loose parts and why it is something that we think is a good idea for you as the director to promote, both to your parents and to your teachers. So I was going to say,
real quick,
when
we talked about this and we were doing a little bit, you had mentioned that there were some educational theories that use this concept. And I had another take on it, but tell me a little bit about the theories, just so we have a place to start that kind of grounds the conversation.
So the two educational philosophies that always use loose parts are the Reggio Emilia philosophy, or the 100 Languages of Children, and the other is the Waldorf educational philosophy. And in both of those, they tend to be natural items that are all the loose parts. So pine cones and leaves and seashells, branches, all those kinds of things. So the loose parts have a tendency to be natural parts in those programs specifically. And the idea is that the loose parts gives you more running room, not physical running room, mental running room. The kids can imagine those things being lots of different things, and they can build with them in different ways, and they can use them in different ways in dramatic play. They can examine them. So you've got some science and math going on. You know, they can just be used open-ended. So some people call them open-ended play materials as opposed to loose parts. But either term works. They may have slightly different connotations.
It even comes back into some of your, when you do the art, the process art versus product art.
Yep.
Because I can see how, at least, depending on certain age groups, how you could also include loose parts into your arts center or that kind of space as well, correct? Wouldn't that be if you had glue and pom-poms and things that they could put together to make some sort of an art project? Would that be the same concept?
Absolutely. And some people have also called them maker spaces or STEM spaces. And really, if you think about almost everything in an infant or toddler classroom, really is a loose part because it's all going to be dumped on the ground anyway.
Yeah, so, growing up with two older boys and boys and daughters who loved Legos, loose parts has a whole different meaning to me than exactly what it is. But yeah, so you brought up the term makerspace, and for me, especially right now, especially in school age programs, so if you're listening to today's podcast and you're in a preschool and above, or you have that kind of room, makerspace is a huge buzzword. It's
marketing.
Yes. Libraries have them. Schools have them. So if you want to be viewed from a parent standpoint and you're trying to look like an up and coming program, start telling everybody about your makerspace and label it that way. Put it in your materials that way. When you do your tours of the program, let them know that you have a makerspace area in all of your classrooms.
Or you can call it your STEM or STEAM corner.
Absolutely. I mean, the way you get STEM to STEAM is by adding that art. And that's where this creativity really gets to come in. And again, this is for you when you're trying to get people into your program and differentiate your program.
So, we said we were going to talk to you about how to sell it to your clients and how to sell it to your teachers. So when we're selling it to the parents, we talk about how there's been studies that show the more that children are engaging in problem-solving activities, the better they're going to do in school. and the better they're going to do in life. And so you like to have some open-ended materials so that the children can problem solve and figure out how to put those pieces together to make, an Eiffel Tower. Or you can even use, I like the Eiffel Tower because the Eiffel Tower was basically a whole bunch of found materials that Mr. Eiffel used to build that. So I think of loose parts and the Eiffel Tower kind of together, but that may just be my brain. What are some other, we talked about this earlier.
Okay, I'm going to jump on your Eiffel Tower thing.
Okay.
Only because he did take that from STEM to STEAM. Do you know what is actually inside the Statue of Liberty?
Well, I walked around inside of it, and there's a model of a giant toe.
Okay, that's not what I meant. So basically, the internal structure of the Statue of Liberty is basically the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel is actually who constructed the inside
structure,
the engineering inside the Statue of Liberty, both the one that's in France and the one that is here in the United States. And so when you start thinking about statues and art, sometimes you need that really strong base.
Yeah.
And so this is a great opportunity for you as a director, when you are selling to your parents or the community or even your teachers, helping them understand that, because I've run into teachers who are like almost stemmed to death in their own head. They don't realize that they get new kids and new teachers and new parents all the time. So not every parent's heard the STEM pitch, As a teacher, you might have heard it for like the last 20 years, but remember, you don't have the same kids that you had 20 years ago. These kids have all kind of moved on.
Yep.
But there is a way to connect that and helping those parents understand that kids need a solid foundation, just like a house, that if you can engineer and math a really solid foundation, you can get as creative as you want on top, as long as you understand that foundation and how those basics work. And that's exactly what we get to do here with preschool. And that is what preschool programs are, right? They're giving the kids the foundation to go on and do some really awesome learning.
Okay, we've talked a little bit about how to sell it in your tour or on your website or your Facebook group or whatever. How do you get the teachers on board, Kate? Because that's kind of what you do now for a living. How do you because some of the teachers are like, these guys are 3. We don't need to be doing no STEM. What do you mean STEM in a 3-year-old classroom? And other people are like, look, if I have to do Tinker Toys one more time, I am going to quit. Because every time we do, somebody sticks one of those things up their nose, and I don't want to do it anymore. So how do you get those teachers on board?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that needs to happen. And we'll talk about this in believe it or not, an upcoming episode on staff training. But when you're doing your staff training and getting to and including new things in your staff program, find out what they like. Find out where their interests are. So if I had teachers, especially in my 3-year-old classroom, who are very into art or history, then I'm going to find the STEM connection to that art and history and help them understand how a lot of what we think of as master craftsmen were actually awesome engineers as well. And, there's some people that make very easy examples for them. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci is a pretty safe bet that most people know who he is. And it's really hard to identify him as just, if you know anything about him, as either just a painter or just a sculptor or just an inventor, because he was all of those things. And again, helping make that connection to your teachers is really, really important. And this is also one of those things that if you're not really, really comfortable as a director, spend 5 minutes on Google.
Yeah.
Because you can Google preschool STEM, preschool makerspace, 3-year-old makerspace, 3-year-old STEM, and you'll get all kinds of opportunities. I mean, I was doing preschool interactive digital curriculum 17 years ago. Like, this was things that people were doing that long ago. And I remember how, and I'm going to go with innovative because it really felt that way at the time, that the company that I wrote curriculum for actually was able to make a table that the kids could touch and do things. And it was all on a computer, and it was basically a big tablet. And, now we have those and they walk around and they're, 8 by 12, and every kid has seen them and lives on them by the time they're probably 3. Maybe not every kid, but probably a fair number of the kids in your classroom have been on a smartphone or a tablet of some sort. So,
yeah. And I think part of it is also saying, okay, well, you've got toddlers and they're trying to build towers with everything. So how about we give them specific things to build with that they're going to have success with, so you're going to have fewer temper tantrums, and that are not going to cause a huge problem in your classroom. So I'm going to give you these tree cookies. Kate, can you explain what tree cookies are? Because I don't know how to explain them.
And with that, I'm going to take one other option that might be really cool, is to think about like Jenga. Like, we always love Jenga, and now that they have the outdoor
Giant
grown-up
Jenga?
size Jenga, that's even more fun as far as a resource of materials for the kids to use to play. So tree cookies are literally, or tree coasters. They are logs that you've sliced up. But you can get them in all different kinds of shapes and sizes. And so the next time you have a neighbor or somebody with a tree that goes down, or you find a tree down on somebody's property, or let all of your parents know, cutting them up into different sections. From an educational standpoint, you can use the rings and learn all about weather.
And the tree branches. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Sometimes when you say that, people think that you're doing the 3-foot diameter and bringing that into the toddler classroom. We're using that on the playground.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking like coaster size. Uh, and so they're, 3 to 5 inches. They can be 1 inch thick. They can be a little bit thicker. You don't want them too thick. You don't want them too heavy. But they go together really nicely. And yes, there are some catalogs that are gorgeous, right? They've got all these wonderful natural materials, and they really are made from natural materials. They're not just plastic to look that way. But this is one of those areas that, as far as I'm concerned, is a toy you can make.
Yes.
And you don't even have to be all that handy. I mean, this really is find a tree that went down, cut the sucker up. It's always nice if you can sand it. It's nice if you can add some, what's that clear stuff?
Sealer? Sealer.
Yes.
Super complicated name there, Kate.
And so it is one of those things that you do have that option. And so it's really worth making sure that you think through all of the resources that you have. And what's nice is, by making the different sizes, the kids can, and if you're mathematical, or you really like things precise, you can do everything in 1 inch and basically make a tree version of Legos. So you can have 1 inch ones and 2 inch ones and 3 inch ones. And you can start to teach fractions that way. Again, ways to tie this back into math, because there's no reason why our youngest kids can't be learning mathematical concepts. Like, look, it takes 2 of these to make 1 of these.
Yep.
You've now taught them the concept of a half.
And so, we've talked a little bit about, natural elements that could be used. Like, you can have your pine cones, you can have your tree cookies, you can have rocks, and anybody who's had a pea gravel fall surface is aware of the volume of crystal rocks that the children can find
and bring home
and put in your pockets and put in their shoes and other places.
In my washer.
Yep.
And in my dryer.
But, so those are one type of loose part, right? Those natural elements, and they're great, but you can also have other kinds of loose parts. In some ways, your unit blocks are loose parts, right? They're open-ended. They can be whatever you want. So that's kind of the first mass-produced loose parts are your unit blocks. And then you've got things like pieces of PVC pipe in different diameters, so that you can stick them into each other and build, wild imaginative structures out of different pieces of PVC pipe. Again, you can spend more money and get the version in, your Lakeshore catalog, but I'm telling you that the PVC pipe from Lowe's is going to be less expensive and it will last longer. So,
well, and not just the PVC pipe, but all the little bendy, twisty lids. Like, there's so many pieces that go with PVC pipe. To me, the biggest thing with PVC pipe is setting a budget, because
well, but
I can have a little, and Carrie can too. We both can have a little way too much fun, in a hardware store or office supply store. But in this case, because there's all these things that go on the ends, it can be a lot of fun to watch the kids push and screw together. And
I
and
love
make
getting
bendy
the
things.
really thin and then putting on the end a hose adapter. And so they basically make their own sprinkler in the summer. I may be a little crazy, but I give them a hammer and small nails. This is, of course, the older kids, so that they can poke the holes in the PVC. And I've done that more than once. Let the kids make their own sprinklers. They are absolutely ridiculous, and they rarely survive one go, but it's a lot of fun. But you can go to the home repair shop, the Home Depot, the Lowe's, whatever. And if you go to where they cut those pieces for customers, and you say, "Hi, I work in a childcare center, and we don't have a whole lot of money for materials. If I brought you a box to put here by the cutting station, would you be willing to just put in pieces, that nobody's going to take home for a couple of days, and I'll come back in 3 days and pick up the box with whatever's in it?" And most of the time they're going to say yes, because you've given them a very finite amount of time that the box is going to be there, and you've given them a reason why.
Well, and what's also nice about that is, again, this is getting to know your customers and your families and your parents. And, is anybody building? Is anybody in construction? Again, before you ever spend money on a toy or a potential toy or something you want in your classroom, whether it's the mac and cheese box, the Starbucks cup, the coffee cup, the PVC, or even your unit blocks. Talk to your families. I'm sure that you have got some families with that miscellaneous pipe in the garage, and they don't know what to do with. They have it, right? And maybe it was just me. My garage had 2 pieces, and all of my kids were old. But it's because I had kids who were doing backyard ballistics. But then when we were done, we had the leftover PVC pipe.
Yeah.
If somebody had ever called me and said, "Hey, do you have any?" I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, yes, please come get these 2 8-foot pieces of PVC pipe out of my garage."
Or they may have leftover scraps of wood from some project, and if you drilled holes in them and gave kids long bolts, kids love to put 2 pieces of wood together and then run a lag bolt through them. They just think that that's amazingly fun. And if you don't know what a lag bolt is, that's not my fault. But,
Yes, any of those, all of those loose parts. And for anybody who isn't really sure, again, if you haven't totally figured out what the loose parts are, it is just that, it's loose parts. So, some of us really like containers. So some people do loose parts literally just on a tray. I am a container keeper, so I like all my loose parts in a container, which at least helps my head to start. And when they're done, because then the kids know what goes in there, I always have a picture of what went in that box. On the box, either on the outside of the box or even on the bottom. Like if you looked in the box on the bottom, there's a picture, or maybe both, depending on the age of the classroom. Know what's going to work for you and your teachers, because there are also some teachers, Carrie, and I know you had them too, right?
Yep.
Even especially in the younger classroom, they don't like those little things, because then they have to pick up all those little things.
Well, and my answer was always in the toddler classrooms, when the teachers would complain about that, I was like, well, why do you have 8 buckets of toys out at a time? You shouldn't have 8 buckets of toys out. That's too many for this age group. Well, because the shelf looks empty. Yeah, they don't care. They're 18 months old. They do not have the same aesthetic concerns that you have. Put a couple stuffed animals on there, you'll be fine.
Get smaller shelves. Get some. I mean, why not get smaller shelves? It gives you more room in your classroom. So.
It can also be things like old diaper wipe containers. Those are loose parts.
Oh, do you remember? And I don't even know if they still do this. I loved it when they used to be basically the equivalent of a large Lego box.
Yes, they still have them. Yeah. And
and they would connect. I mean, it was that and pool noodles. I mean, pool noodles are just, to me. So once I ever saw somebody use pool noodles like Lincoln Logs, and they cut them and they did all the notches, I thought to myself, where have I been for almost 15 years? Because you can buy the case of the pool noodles, like you can buy like 36 of those things for like $36, like a buck of pool noodle at the Dollar Tree, and man, you could notch them, and then they could be making full size Lincoln Logs. Like, I just,
yep.
anyway.
And that is, again, a loose part. That is loose parts. At one of our centers, we just had tires that were non-radial tires that were just loose, and the kids could roll them around the playground, and they loved them. We had the larger PVC pipe and tennis balls, and the connectors for them, and they would make basically marble mazes for tennis balls. There's so many ways to use it, guys. But we were, I'm trying to sell you on it so that then you're going to sell your staff on it, and you're going to sell your parents on it, because it's a way to stretch your dollar. We can all use that right now. How to get more new equipment into your program without spending a lot of money, get better play value out of it than by buying another $150 worth of plastic toys.
Just think of it as, when they always joke that toddlers like the boxes better than the toy,
Yep.
Or the cat likes the box better than the toy. Same kind of thing. So yeah, we're going to use it. We are going to do, in the future, we'll probably do an episode on making toys, but it's going to be later in the spring. I don't know, we might look at moving it up, but
it may have to be a video. I don't know how I can talk about those things. I just do them.
well, maybe we'll do both. Maybe we'll experiment. Maybe it may have to be later so we can experiment and figure out how to do that. So anything else that you want to mention as we kind of wrap up the loose parts, just so that we kind of stay with our time? Because I know you and I can talk about loose parts, or at least loose marbles.
Marbles are another loose part. Dominoes, so many things. Paper clips, which is what I'm fidgeting with right now. All of those
Legos, Tinker Toys, there's the things that were built or that were packaged and marketed as loose parts. Connects and Lincoln Logs and Tinker Toys and Legos, that's what they are.
Yep.
But you don't need to spend the money there, and that's what I'm hoping we did today was share some examples to get you thinking outside of the commercial box. That box of all of the people who are trying to sell you something. And boxes are a great example of a loose part. I mean, think about all the cereal boxes and oatmeal boxes. And if you, we used to think about that probably all the time with the round oatmeal boxes, because that was a really solid cardboard. But there's no reason we can't do it with every other cardboard box everybody's been priming for the last 9 months.
Yep. So I think we've hopefully given you a place to start. If you liked this episode, please go on to Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast service you're using and write us a review. It really helps other people be able to find us. Or you can share it with a colleague. The end. Thank you for listening to Colorful Clipboards. Connect with us on social media at Colorful Clipboard, or send us an email to hello@colorfulclipboards.
Send us your voicemail with your own questions and stories. If you want to keep learning with us, visit Texas Director, where we continue to have seminars, licensing, programs, and more.
This show has been made by me, Carrie Casey, and Kate Young, with assistance from Hallie Casey and Marie Young. If you learned something today, share the show.